Hey YouTube, Matt and Alice Welch here, and now it's time for me to do my second ace signature and favorite deck of all time, my Helios deck. Now, this deck is a pretty tricky deck to use. I mean, I've always liked the Helios monsters since I've seen them in the anime when Jaden dueled Amniel, aka Professor Banner. He used the Helios monsters along with the Alchemy Beasts, which at the time of recording have never been released in real cards. Maybe one day they will. But yeah, I've decided to build a deck around them back in September of '08 because I really loved Helios Trice was just in the anime, and I was like hoping they would make it into a real card, and they did. And it's my second favorite card in the entire game, next to Dark Magician, and number 3 being Battle Guard King. So yeah, this is the deck. So let's get into it. So starting off with the main boss monster, Helios Trismegistus. And he could be special summoned by tributing Helios Duo Magistos, which could be special summoned by tributing Helios the Primordial Sun, the smallest Helios. And that's it for the Helios monsters. Now we go to the rest of the deck, which is 3 copies of Cyber Dragon, 3 copies of DD Warrior Lady, 3 copies of DD Warrior, 3 copies of Honest. It's a light deck, despite DD Warrior and DD Crow and Ash Blossom. So this will definitely help power up my monsters during the damage step. And 2 copies of DD Crow, 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Again, my most favorite tuner and hand trap in the game. And then finally, 2 copies of Effect Killer, my second favorite hand trap and tuner monster. Spells: Card Destruction, Dark Core, Dark Hole, Harpy's Feather Duster, Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Regeki, 3 copies of Soul Release, the most important spell in the deck. Helps me banish monsters in the either graveyard and power up my Helios monsters. So that definitely does help. The same thing with DD Warrior Lady and DD Warrior. And finally, Twin Twisters. The traps. We have 2 copies of Torrential Tribute, 1 Solemn Judgment, and 2 copies of Solemn Strike. This deck doesn't have an extra deck. It does. My 2008 one that I took to Worlds does, but it really doesn't need an extra deck, really. I've rarely ever used it. I mean, it does help, but don't really need it. And yeah, so this is the deck. I mean, the deck does work. Again, it's just a very tricky deck to use. It definitely did okay today during the match with me and Dark Witch D4's Rainbow Neos deck, but it didn't really kick off the way I wanted to. It just had a very horrible hand, but it did okay. But there's times where it does work very well. There's times where it does okay. There's times where it breaks. But we need more Helios support. Seriously, we need something that can help power these guys up, help banish cards. Something. Macrocosmos and Dimensional Fissure are not really recommended for this deck because in order for Helios to get their effects going, you need to send them to the graveyard. And if you have Macrocosmos, Dimensional Fissure, you're not going to be able to send your monsters to the graveyard. They're just going to be banished. That's the problem. So we need to figure a way to get new support. So anyway, guys, so now I'm going to upload deck profile number 3, my Battle Guard deck. So stay tuned for that. See ya.